For 5 years, I juggled raising a child, caring for our parents, doing housework, and working. When my daughter started elementary school, I finally collapsed from the strain. My unexpected long-term hospitalization infuriated my husband. "You've been getting pretty cheeky lately. You don't seem to know your place. I'm divorcing you." Ethan slammed divorce papers with his signature already on it onto the side table. "Think about how you're gonna handle this." With that, Ethan left the hospital room. He didn't even ask about our daughter. I was relieved she was staying with my parents, but I knew Ethan would head straight to his mistress instead of coming home. Divorce papers, huh? Feeling completely indifferent, I headed to the lawyer's office as soon as I was discharged and filed the divorce papers. However, oh, what's this? The next day, my phone was filled with dozens of missed calls from Ethan. I didn't know what he wanted, but it was too late for anything he had to say. He could regret it all he wanted. My name is Tina Smith, and I'm 40 years old. I live with my husband Ethan and our daughter Chloe. We've been married for 5 years, and during that time, I've been constantly juggling childcare, housework, work, and taking care of my father-in-law. I remember when I first met Ethan, I never imagined things would turn out this way. Our meeting was purely by chance while I was out shopping on a day off. Ethan was the one who helped me when my heel broke. When we were dating, he was kind and always celebrated my birthdays and anniversaries. But after we got married, he changed. It took me 5 years to come to terms with Ethan's sudden change. Shortly after we got married, I found out I was pregnant. Ethan demanded that I quit my job. "Taking maternity leave and parental leave will just inconvenience your company. Quit your job." "What? But didn't you hear me? I said quit your job. Or are you saying my income isn't enough?" Hearing Ethan shout for the first time shocked and frightened me. "No, that's not it. But I thought I could continue working since there's an option for reduced hours. You're my wife now. Prioritize our home. We're having a baby. You don't have time to work." Ethan shouted again. This time, he looked like he might get physical, so I reluctantly gave in to his demands. Okay. I'll quit my job." Say that from the start. You can't even do housework properly and you're being cheeky. His attitude was so different from before we got married that I was constantly bewildered, trying not to upset him. Although my colleagues were sorry to see me go, I finished my job handover and quit 6 months later. Until I resigned, Ethan kept making snide remarks. "You're dragging out your job so much. Are you really planning to quit? You're not trying to get away with it, are you?" "No, it's just that the handover is taking time. Don't think you can fool me. You're not getting away with anything. You must quit your job. Maternity and parental leave are always a bother to me. It's embarrassing that my wife would be such a nuisance." I couldn't understand why Ethan was so insistent on me quitting my job. Nowadays, dual-income families are the norm, and sometimes there's even pressure to work. So I didn't know what was on his mind. But I found out his true intentions in an unexpected way a month after I quit my job. One night, I woke up thirsty. When I went to the living room to get some water, I heard Ethan talking. He seemed to be talking on the phone. "Yeah. That woman finally quit her job." I immediately knew he was talking about me. Hearing him refer to me as that woman made my eyes widen. "The baby's coming, so she can't run away easily now. Don't worry, Mia is the one I really care about." Mia must be the person he was talking to. I couldn't hear her words, but I heard her high-pitched laugh. Yeah. I want Mia to stay free and beautiful. It's better than being tied down with marriage and a family. It's an adult romance." The word affair flashed through my mind. Judging by his words, Ethan didn't plan to marry Mia. He was just manipulating both of us for his convenience. "Looking forward to our date next week." Ethan had told me he'd be on a business trip next week. He must be lying to have fun with his mistress. I felt nauseous and wanted to leave right then and there. But, as Ethan mentioned on the phone, we were having a baby. Plus, I was already in the process of quitting my job. There was nothing I could do. It was humiliating and shameful, but I had to endure it for the sake of my child. Biting my lip, I quietly returned to the bedroom. My dad had a stroke. He's gonna be in a wheelchair from now on, Ethan suddenly told me just after Chloe was born.
No way! But he's not in any immediate danger, right?
My in-laws were wonderful people who were very kind to me and Chloe, unlike Ethan. I valued them more than Ethan at this point.
I said he'll be in a wheelchair. Listen when I talk.
Ethan had become increasingly short-tempered, yelling at every word I said. His outbursts scared me, and I watched his every move. I'm sorry.
Don't ever interrupt me again. Got it? From now on, you'll take care of my dad. Since he can't work anymore, I'll support my parents financially. You need to get a part-time job or something. But Chloe was just born.
I was shocked. Ethan's family was quite wealthy, and even with his father's health issues, they shouldn't be struggling so much that Ethan had to cover their living expenses. Actually, his father had already retired and was living comfortably. While some money might be needed for home renovations, it didn't seem like Ethan needed to support them financially. Sensing my doubts, Ethan's face turned red with anger.
Hey! I said not to interrupt. Don't talk back. You can leave the baby at your parents' or daycare. Are you telling me to abandon my parents?
No, that's not what I meant. Maybe he was using this as an excuse to spend money on his mistress. The thought weighed heavily on me. Being an only son of a wealthy family, Ethan had always been reckless with money. He didn't seem to accept having to cover the living expenses either. I believe his increasingly tyrannical behavior since we got married stems, in part, from his sense of superiority due to his wealthy family background.
I'm the one paying for your living expenses. If I'm telling you to help support my parents, you better comply without any fuss.
I regretted not taking maternity leave and continuing my job. But saying this now would only enrage Ethan again. Afraid of his anger, I reluctantly agreed to look for daycare and a job while helping with his father's care. Since his father was still in the hospital, I left Chloe with my parents and went to visit him.
Tina! I already told Ethan, you don't need to help with the care. Chloe was just born. My husband's legs are paralyzed, but he can still move. The baby is more important.
When I offered to help, my mother-in-law was very surprised over the phone. It seemed Ethan wasn't even listening to his own parents.
That's right, Tina. Don't worry about an old man like me. Take care of Chloe.
My father-in-law, who had supposedly had a stroke, sounded surprisingly strong and healthy.
Thank you. But Ethan seems worried about you both. And I am too, so please let me help if you need anything. That's kind of you, but...
In the end, despite their reluctance, I insisted on helping with my in-laws' daily life. At the same time, I found a part-time job to contribute to the household expenses. Most of the living costs came from my part-time earnings. The problem was that Ethan didn't help with the housework, childcare, or caregiving. While I was exhausted from all the new responsibilities, Ethan not only refused to help but also hurled insults at me whenever he felt like it.
Why isn't dinner ready when the man of the house comes home? You've been slacking on the housework lately. It's impossible to do all the housework, childcare, and caregiving perfectly. At least help with Chloe or take care of your dad on weekends. I'm working a full-time job. Unlike your part-time job, I have more work and responsibility. Housework, childcare, and caregiving are the wife's duties. Don't lean on me because you're being lazy. What did you say?
I was too stunned and angry to respond. My in-laws always apologized and thanked me whenever I visited, and they doted on Chloe. Honestly, I was grateful I could consult them about childcare since it was my first time doing it. Taking care of my father-in-law wasn't a burden because we worked together and discussed things. The only strain was physical, but I managed since my mother-in-law and father-in-law were in the same situation. The hard part was being at home. I had to do everything myself. I couldn't have my father-in-law watch Chloe, who can't walk yet, or ask my mother-in-law to cook lunch while I went shopping. Ethan just sat on the couch watching TV, doing nothing, and being tyrannical. Gradually, I dreaded being at home more than being at my in-laws' house. I managed to keep this up for 5 years thanks to the support from both my parents and in-laws. But when Chloe started elementary school, the stress finally got to me, and I collapsed suddenly. Fortunately, I collapsed at my parents' house, and they were able to call an ambulance right away. But the problems started after that.
Fibroids?
Yes. The tests show you need surgery. However, you seem to be very fatigued, so we're also concerned about your strength. You'll need to be hospitalized for a while to recover before the surgery. Fibroids usually don't require a long hospital stay. But due to my weakened condition, I needed long-term hospitalization. Ethan showed up after work when he got the news, and, as expected, he yelled at me with a furious expression.
You collapsed? What about Dad's care? What about the house and the kid? You're half-assing everything. Useless. Spineless.
That's not something you say to someone who just got rushed to the hospital by ambulance. However, I had already given up on Ethan, so I listened to his words with a calm heart. Seeing my calm reaction must have infuriated him. Ethan clicked his tongue loudly and glared at me.
You've been getting pretty cheeky lately. You don't seem to know your place. I'm divorcing you.
He must have prepared it in advance. Ethan slammed divorce papers with his signature already on it onto the side table.
Think about what you're gonna do next.
In the end, Ethan left the hospital room. He didn't even ask about Chloe. I was relieved she was staying with my parents, but I knew he would head straight to his mistress instead of coming home. Divorce papers, huh? I filled out the necessary information on the divorce papers and tucked them into a clear file folder. Chloe stayed alternately with my parents and in-laws, who brought her to the hospital every day. Ethan hasn't visited me or Chloe even once. Feeling like everything was pointless, I went straight to a lawyer's office after being discharged and filed the divorce papers. After informing my father-in-law about the divorce, I spent some much-needed time with Chloe. It had been a while since we slept in the same bed, and Chloe was so happy that it healed my weary heart. Oh, what's this? When I woke up and checked my phone, I was surprised. There were dozens of missed calls from Ethan. And right at this moment, he was calling again. I could ignore it, but he would just keep calling continuously. Reluctantly, I decided to answer.
Do you know what time it is? The number of missed calls is ridiculous. Hey! Where are you?
Without listening to me, Ethan's angry voice shouted in my ear. His voice was trembling. It seemed like he was crying.
Where do you think?
I'm at my parents' house, of course.
Of course? Don't be ridiculous. Why aren't you at home?
I couldn't help but laugh at his words. Normally, he'd be furious by now, but he didn't have the energy to notice my reaction. He just kept ranting through his tears. What are you talking about? We're divorced, so of course, I'm at my parents' house.
Divorced? You actually went through with that? Come back right now. What about taking care of Dad? The housework and childcare? You've got plenty to do.
Even in this situation, he only thought of himself. If he thought these words would make me come back, he was delusional. I got permission from your dad. Chloe is with me, so I'll handle childcare. As for housework, I don't care. We're divorced, so take care of yourself. I'm not involved anymore.
Permission from my dad? No way. He told me if we divorced, he'd disown me. What did you tell them?
It seemed my in-laws had confronted him about the divorce. That was why he was crying. His once stable life plan had suddenly collapsed, leaving him panicking.
I don't know. Don't make it sound worse than it is. They were disappointed because you never visited or helped care for them.
Ignoring Ethan's continued yelling, I hung up. Mornings are busy for me. I didn't have time to deal with him.
Mom, what's wrong?
Nothing, sweetie. Okay. Living with my parents was so much easier with their help with housework and childcare. I left the house with Chloe and headed to work. Everything with Ethan was going according to plan. After my hospitalization, I had told my in-laws about the situation between Ethan and me. I felt guilty about tattling, but I was at my limit, both physically and mentally. My in-laws had already been suspicious because I was the only one visiting and helping with care while their son never showed up. When I collapsed, they were worried and asked me about the situation, which led to my confiding in them.
He's disowned. Our estate will go to Chloe.
My father-in-law was furious about how his son had treated his wife and child. My mother-in-law looked dejected.
We spoiled him too much because he was our only son. We relied on you for help and didn't consider your situation enough. I'm so sorry. It's okay. I truly wanted to help you and Dad. Besides, I was doing all the housework and childcare alone at home. When I was at your place, you helped with Chloe, which was actually a relief for me. So please, don't worry about it.
My mother-in-law wiped away the tears that had welled up in her eyes. Chloe, who had come to the hospital with them, looked at me with concern while being surrounded by her beloved grandparents.
Mom, are you okay?
I'm fine. I'm just gonna be in the hospital for a little while. We had a proper discussion and decided on a plan moving forward. During my hospital stay, both my parents and in-laws would take care of everything. They also checked on the house and kept me updated. Ethan hadn't been home at all, which was another reason my in-laws were angry.
What would he have done if his daughter had been left alone? How did he turn out to be so irresponsible?
I also wondered how Ethan had become like this despite having such good parents. My mother-in-law blamed herself for spoiling him, but seeing how he acted in front of them, I didn't think they had spoiled him that much.
Tina, I'm truly sorry. Please cut ties with him. I mentioned leaving the inheritance to Chloe, but if you don't want that, you can refuse. If you stay connected with us, you'll still have some minimal contact with him.
My father-in-law looked down, ashamed. Disowning him wouldn't stop Ethan from trying to get his hands on the inheritance. He'd find a way to get the money if he could. But I didn't want to give in to that.
I respect you both. I don't care about the inheritance, but I don't want to sever my relationship with you too. Chloe loves her grandparents so much. Ethan said he wanted a divorce, and I'm happy to oblige since I have no love left for him. But I'd like to continue helping each other as we always have. Would that be a problem?
Tears welled up in their eyes. I loved and respected these two people deeply. They are as important to me as my own parents. They seemed to understand my feelings and hugged me and Chloe.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you. We're so glad to have you and Chloe.
We were family. Marrying Ethan had been a mistake, but meeting these wonderful people was a blessing. I truly felt that from the bottom of my heart. Today, I attended a meeting with a client. Although I had just recovered, I had kept up with work and information, so I was confident. The company also trusted me with the task. The presentation for the new product went smoothly, and I answered some questions and made suggestions, resulting in a very productive meeting.
I was worried because of the break, but it went smoother than I thought.
Just before heading home after finishing my work, I ran into Ethan in the company lobby. Well, I had expected this. It was because the client was Ethan's company. That's why I had explained the situation to the client and arranged the meeting when Ethan wasn't supposed to be there. He was supposed to be out visiting clients, but it seemed he had come back early. From what I could see, he was just chatting with a female colleague in the lobby. It would be nice if he at least respected work hours. I intended to ignore him, but Ethan furrowed his brows and came straight at me.
What are you doing here? Trying to harass me?
Ethan suddenly shouted, drawing the attention of everyone around us. The receptionist began making a phone call in a hurry. I tried to stay calm and keep my voice steady so he wouldn't drag me down with him. I'm here for work. Don't interfere.
Work? A part-timer like you can't have business at a big company like this.
Several people frowned at Ethan's words. How many people work part-time at this company, I wonder? If he turns all of them against him, he surely won't be able to work here properly.
You ignore my calls but show up at my workplace? You're pathetic. Get my parents to take back the disownment right now. And never show your face to me again.
Hearing that Ethan had been disowned, some onlookers started whispering to each other with pleased expressions. It seemed he had been acting arrogantly at work as well. He had already made many enemies. A normal person would back down in this cold atmosphere, but Ethan was glaring at me, breathing heavily. Moreover, a woman, just as clueless as Ethan, joined in. It was the same woman he had been chatting with earlier.
Ethan, what's going on? Is this your ex-wife?
Both of the receptionists frowned. And several other women also looked displeased. It seemed she was the type to be disliked by her own gender.
Mia. Yeah, this is my ex-wife. It's such a nuisance that she showed up here.
Mia looked at me and laughed mockingly. It was infuriating, but yelling back would be pointless. I quietly watched their triumphant faces.
Too bad. Ethan's real love is me. You chased him all the way here, how desperate and creepy. Go home, stalker, before you get arrested.
It was pointless to react. As I remained silent, Ethan and Mia seemed to think I was intimidated, and their smiles grew even wider. Meanwhile, I noticed a man in the lobby running to the elevator and talking to someone inside.
Over here! Hurry!
Guided by the man, the person who stepped out of the elevator was the head of the Planning and Development Department, who had been in the meeting with me earlier. The head, who seemed to have been briefed on the situation, hurried over to me.
What's going on here?
The head spoke to me, but Ethan responded.
I'm sorry. It's embarrassing, but this woman has been following me to harass me. I apologize for causing a scene at the company. I'll get rid of her right away.
At Ethan's words, the head's expression changed.
How dare you? That's incredibly rude. Apologize now. What?
The head grabbed Ethan's head and forced him to apologize to me. Ethan and Mia seemed unable to comprehend the sudden turn of events.
I deeply apologize for the rudeness of our employees.
It's okay.
It's embarrassing, but it's true I was once married to this man. There was a misunderstanding. You don't need to worry about it.
With the head's arrival, the crowd dispersed. The incident would undoubtedly spread throughout the company by the end of the day. The receptionists were watching intently, so this would undoubtedly spread through them. Others in the lobby, who seemed to be there for work, were glancing at Ethan with interest. The only ones who didn't grasp the situation were Ethan and Mia.
This is ridiculous. She's just a part-time worker. Sir, you're being deceived. That's right.
It's remarkable that they still have the nerve to argue with their superior in this situation, but don't they realize they're only making things worse? As expected, the head of the department shouted at Ethan.
Shut up. Keep your mouth closed. I apologize for this behavior. I'll deal with it strictly.
I wanted Ethan and Mia to face the consequences of their actions. So I decided to take advantage of the situation.
You're right. At this rate, they might be rude to other clients and partners. Please take appropriate action.
Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, but he kept silent, not wanting to anger his boss further. Mia still couldn't give up and shrieked.
This is a joke, right? There's no way this old woman is important. Didn't you hear me? Be quiet.
Mia finally fell silent after being yelled at loudly. I deliberately spoke to the two of them in a calm voice.
It seems you don't understand the situation. I don't have any business cards to give you, but I'll just introduce myself. I work in the product development department at Jackson Corporation.
Before I got married, I worked at this company. Ethan and Mia's faces changed.
That's a lie. You quit that company. An old woman like you couldn't possibly work there now. Stop lying. You're just showing off.
Ignoring them, I talked to the head of the department.
I never imagined they wouldn't understand. I apologize, I thought introducing myself would clear things up. No, we should be the ones apologizing. I'm truly sorry. We'll make sure to address this strictly.
Ignoring Ethan and Mia, the head and I continued our conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the trouble. Once I return to the office, I'll formally apologize and explain the situation.
The head seemed to decide that talking to Ethan and Mia was useless, so he focused on assisting me. Understanding my suggestion that Ethan and Mia wouldn't cause any more trouble in front of everyone, the head began making calls to arrange for my transportation and to notify Ethan's direct supervisor. In the meantime, I spoke to Ethan and Mia in a voice only they could hear.
Jackson Corporation is actually run by my relatives. I never mentioned that, did I?
Before we got married, my parents advised me to keep quiet about it, so I did. Looking back, it was the right decision. If Ethan had known, who knows how he might have tried to use that information.
Since I quit once, I did start as a part-timer when I came back. Then I became a part-time employee with reduced hours, then a full-time employee. Maybe it was nepotism, but I worked my way up. It helped that I was familiar with the company and the department.
I had worked hard to get here. Balancing housework, childcare, and caregiving wasn't easy. But because my relatives, except for Ethan, supported me, I've been able to make it this far.
Mia, was it? Sorry, but I earn more than your boyfriend now. There's no benefit for me to stay married to him, so I'm glad we divorced. You can have him if you want. I don't care anymore.
Ethan glared at me with hatred in his eyes. This prideful man probably couldn't stand that I said I didn't need him. Looking back, Ethan probably made me quit my job because he couldn't stand the fact that I was a full-time employee at a company he did business with. The thought of having to defer to his wife in a professional setting must have been unbearable for him. He's a small-minded man to the core.
Oh, by the way, I have solid proof of the affair. I've discussed it with your parents.
I determined revenge for being manipulated by such a small-minded man. It might also mean taking away his place to stay, but that's his own fault.
Mia, you too. Don't think you can escape.
I spoke to them in a calm, quiet voice. Even though the department head had stepped away, he was still in the lobby. If Ethan and Mia raised their voices again, it could potentially lead to a lawsuit. Fortunately, they weren't that foolish, so they listened to my words quietly.
I can't wait to see how the company handles this after such a public scene.
A few employees remaining in the lobby were all glaring coldly at Ethan and Mia.
Your taxi will be here soon. Please, this way.
Thank you. I was politely escorted out by the company executives as I left. Behind me, I saw Ethan and Mia being dragged into the elevator by what seemed to be their direct supervisor. Ethan had not only been cut ties by his parents but also fired from his job. His rude behavior toward a client was a major reason, but the fact that I was the client and our relationship was terrible also played a part. On top of that, he had made enemies with the part-time employees due to the recent incident. It was only natural that he couldn't perform his duties properly anymore. Later, I presented the evidence of the affair, which a private investigator had gathered. Now, he's desperately job hunting. With no help from his parents and no convenient slave to rely on. He seems to be considering bankruptcy, but I've made sure to secure his assets, so his next moves should be interesting. Mia, on the other hand, resigned voluntarily. Her poor work attitude and the recent scandal made it difficult for her to continue. She's now working diligently at another place.
Tina, Chloe, welcome. Hi, Grandma.
My work is going well, and life is great. Despite cutting ties with Ethan, my relationships with my in-laws and parents are strong. Chloe is very close to both sets of grandparents, and both of them adore her.
Hi, Grandpa. Does your leg still hurt?
Hello, Chloe. My leg feels better now that you're here. Thank you. I heard my daughter's joyful laughter. Both my in-laws looked happy. Marrying Ethan was a mistake, but meeting them was a blessing.
Tina. I got your favorite cake. Let's have some.
Thank you. Although I still try to help with my father-in-law's care, my mother-in-law has hired external help since my collapse. She said bringing Chloe over makes them happiest, so I often visit with her. Surrounded by my wonderful daughter and amazing parents, I am now the happiest I've ever been.